Resourceful Designer, episode 271, Turning Down Clients and Projects.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. His favorite fruit is blueberries. Mark Descote.
Blueberry flavored, well, just about anything. Yes, please. In this week's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about turning down design clients or design projects, when you should do it, why you should do it, and how you should do it. Let me know if you get any value from this episode by emailing me at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com. I would love to know what you thought. And now let's get right to it, turning down clients and projects. Earlier this week, a member of the Resourceful Designer Community was looking for some advice. A potential client had contacted her asking if she designs book covers, which she does. Now, before replying to this person, she decided to do a little bit of due diligence and look them up first just to see who they are. And what she discovered was this potential client is an author, and the subject they write about is something this designer is strongly against. So she was asking our advice on how she should proceed. Should she straight out tell them no, she doesn't want to talk to them or take on their project, or should she wait to hear more about the project before making that decision? Now, as always, when someone asks a question in the community, they receive lots of great advice. And this time was no different. Now, the consensus was that she should hear them out before deciding what to do. After all, their new book might not have anything to do with the subject of their previous books. But this posed a much bigger question. What reasons are there to turn down a lucrative design project? Now, way back in episode 133 of the podcast, I shared 12 red flags for spotting bad design clients. And if you're curious, you can go back and listen to that at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 133. Now, most of the red flags that I share in that episode only become viable after you've started working with someone. Stuff such as the client being rude to you or maybe inconsistent communication. So those are red flags to spot afterwards. Now, just an FYI, the episode I published after that one, it was a follow-up episode, episode 134. In that one, I shared ways to politely turn away clients. I even included some sample scripts in that episode that you can just copy and paste, edit them as you need, and send them off to the clients. In fact, you may want to remember that episode, episode 134, because after you finish listening to this episode, a lot of those scripts will apply to the same scenarios. So it's one thing to spot the red flags once you've started working with a client. But how can you avoid ever working with those clients in the first place? And why should you want to turn them down? Sure, we're in this business to make money. And when you're first starting out, it may seem like a completely foreign concept to turn down paying design gigs. But what I can tell you, after being in this industry for, over 30 years, is that knowing when a client isn't a good fit for you and knowing how to turn them down quickly becomes a top priority anytime you meet with a new client. Because you're better off putting your time and your energy into finding better clients to work with than wasting your time on those who aren't. Now, if you're a long-time listener of this podcast, you've heard me many times before say that you don't work for your clients, you work with them. And you need to think of every client relationship as a partnership. At least for the duration of the project, you are partnering with that client. Now, that may only be for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but it could also turn into something much, much longer. So you have to ask yourself, anytime you meet a potential client, is this someone I would like to partner with? Yes or no? Now, I could rhyme off a huge list of reasons why you shouldn't work with a client. Some reasons are for nefarious reasons. I mean, they want you to work for exposure. Oh, that dreaded exposure. Man, I don't know why these clients still come up with that one. Or maybe they have unreasonable deadlines that they want you to meet. They call you up on a Friday and they expect this project done by Monday. Or they undervalue what you can provide and only want to pay below your regular rate. You know those clients, the ones that don't think a designer's worth as much as you actually are. Or maybe they're unclear of exactly what it is that they want or they need. Sometimes the client just says, well, they need something, but they don't really know what. Now, you could work with them and try to develop it, but a lot of times that could just turn into a real big headache. So if the client doesn't really know what they want or they need, it might be a good idea to just say, well, maybe come back whenever you do or find somebody else to work with. Or maybe they're asking you to do something unethical or even illegal. They're asking you to copy something or steal something or plagiarize. Or it may be something as simple as they're not comfortable signing a contract. They want you to do the work, but they ask if you can do it without a contract. Well, those are all some pretty nefarious reasons for turning down a client. But there can also be some legitimate reasons that have nothing to do with the clients per se and more to do with you. Maybe you have current obligations to existing clients and you don't have time to take on this new project of theirs. Maybe their project conflicts with some of your values. Maybe what they're asking you to do is not necessarily a service that you offer, so the project is not a good fit. And one that's very common, something that I run into all the time, is the client's budget is just too small. You are at a time in your career where you don't work on projects that small. You need a certain budget for a certain thing, and if the client doesn't have the money, then you politely turn them down. So these are all good reasons to turn down a client. But ultimately, the biggest contributing factor to whether or not you should work with a client is your gut. Trust your gut, that feeling. It's seldom wrong. Now, Mike, a founding member of the Resourceful Designer Community, he gave what I think is the best answer to the original question that was posted. Whenever he finds himself in a situation where he's uncertain about a potential client, he asks himself 3 questions. 1, am I giving up anything that I am more passionate about or that would be more profitable if I chose to take on this project? Think about that. Anytime you say yes to something, it means you're inadvertently saying no to something else. There is always something that has to give, even if it's your personal or your family life. If taking on this new project means neglecting another client's project, then it may not be a good idea, especially if that other client's project is actually more profitable than the new one that you're looking at possibly taking on. Likewise, if taking on this project means that you're going to lose out on time with your spouse or your kids, it may not be a good idea. The extra money may be nice for the household, but is it worth it if all your child remembers is that mommy or daddy missed their game or their performance or their school outing? Is it worth taking on the project for the extra money if it's going to eat into your family life? That's a decision that only you can make. So that was Mike's first filter. Am I giving up anything that I am more passionate about or would be more profitable if I chose to take on this project? Now, his second criteria is, will it be harmful to others? You may recall a story I've shared on the podcast before. I had a very big client, in fact, one of the biggest clients I've ever had, and I had been working with them for years. They owned many different companies, ranging from restaurants to car washes to a telecommunication company. Well, while I was working with them, they ended up acquiring a tobacco company. And according to a study they found, conducted by some anti-smoking organization, the biggest rise in smokers at the time was in girls between the ages of 12 and 18. And in discovering that, my client wanted to use that information to their advantage And they asked me to design a poster that would depict their cigarette in a way that would be appealing to girls in that age range. Well, I refused. There was no way I was going to be complicit in enticing young girls to start smoking. And when the client threatened to pull all their work from me and find another designer if I didn't comply with their request, I just fired them. I said, here, take all your work. I don't care. I was not going to put myself in that situation. So if a design project will be, or even potentially could be harmful to others, turn down the job. And the final criteria that Mike shared is, will taking on the project jeopardize an existing or valued relationship? Think about that. Are you willing to put an existing client relationship at risk or some other relationship at risk just to earn some extra money from this new client? I hope not. Now, of course, this one can be a little bit tricky. I mean, there's a really fine line on what could jeopardize a relationship and what wouldn't. Like, I know that some people disagree with the way I work. Both our local golf courses are clients of mine. Now, technically, the two of them are competitors. So I'm designing something for two different or organizations or whatever you want to call a golf course. I'm designing stuff for two of them that are actually competing against each other. Now, although one of them is a private members-only course and the other one is an open-to-the-public golf course, so each of them market themselves quite differently. And that allows me to do work for both of them without actually stepping on each other's toes. I also have several lawyers as clients, many of which practice the same type of law and are therefore considered competitors. And yet I've never had an issue working with them. So as I said, some people may think that's not a great idea. To me, I have no issues with it. The way I interpret Mike's third criteria is more on moral grounds. For example, my wife works at our local health unit, the spearhead of our fight against the COVID-19 virus. Well, because of that, I would never agree to work on a project that discouraged people from getting vaccinated. It's not worth jeopardizing the relationship I have. So you really have to look at this one and decide if it's worth it. So those are Mike's 3 criteria. And when I saw those, I thought, wow, these are great. This is exactly the sort of thing that designers need to think about every time they take on a new project. So I encourage you to copy down and remember Mike's 3 rules. 1, am I giving anything up that I am more passionate about or that would be more profitable if I chose to take on this new project? 2, will it be harmful to others? And 3, will taking on the project jeopardize an existing and valued relationship? And if this new project or new client fails in any of those 3 questions, it's not worth taking on. Now, Brian, another member of the Resourceful Designer Community, also had one good suggestion. He said, if the project is something you would be ashamed of to have up on your monitor if a child was to walk by, then it's not worth taking on the project. Now, I'll add one more thing onto that, and that's to say that if it's something that you wouldn't want to tell your mother that you're working on, then maybe you should pass on the project. Now, as I said in the beginning, should you ever find yourself having to turn down a client or a project like this, go back and have a look at episode 134, resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 134, where I share different scripts that you can copy and paste depending on your situation and use to send off to clients to politely turn them down. And of course, I'll include a link to that episode in the show notes for this one. Now, all of this from a simple question posed in the Resourceful Designer Community. But that's what it's there for. It's there so that members have a place that they can turn to when they have questions like this or when they need help. And not just a place that they can turn to, but a place that's filled with people they trust and people whose input they value. In the community, we're all there for each other, whether that's to offer advice when needed, to be sounding boards for testing out ideas, to give critiques on design work, to act as accountability partners, or just to be there to encourage people when they need the encouragement. Because we all know each other, we are taking the time to learn who we all are, to get to know each other, to become friends. These interactions are much more personal than if you were posting on, say, Facebook, where random strangers, people that you don't know, offer their opinion, and sometimes it's a misleading or even a wrong opinion. So if you're at a situation in your career where you would like to have a group of people, of peers, that you can interact with on a regular basis that would help you grow and achieve your goals, why not join the Resourceful Designer Community at resourcefuldesigner.com/community. Now, just note, I did this last year and I am planning on doing it again. I will be closing the community down at the end of October. So after October 31st, I will be shutting down enrollment in the community until probably February. So if you've been on the fence and thinking about joining the community, I suggest you do before the door closes. Otherwise, you won't be able to join until February. So that's it for me today. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen, to plug me in your ears or turn me on in your speaker and spending a little bit of your day with me. I do appreciate the opportunity to pass on whatever advice I can. Until next time, I am Mark DeCote, wishing you all the best with your design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.